Let's go!
Little girl pulls her single mom to the blind date, then saw a single dad CEO do. Harper Dawson stood at the sink of her tiny apartment kitchen, scrubbing a sippy cup while watching her daughter twirl in the courtyard outside. Sophie, 3 years old and full of energy, was wearing her usual pink dress and a paper crown gifted by their neighbor, Mrs. Eleanor. The elderly woman, warm and always smiling, had become part of their everyday life. She often brought over homemade cookies and sat on the porch, talking to Harper about everything from flowers to her nephew. "His name's Nathaniel," she'd said once, eyes twinkling, "but everyone calls him Nate. He's a good man. Lost his wife too young, raised his boy alone while running his company. Handsome too, but kind, real kind." Harper had laughed it off. Dating wasn't on her radar. She worked full-time at the senior rehab center and raised Sophie on her own. That was more than enough. But one Thursday afternoon, Eleanor came by with something different, a cream envelope with gold lettering. Harper wiped her hands and opened it. "Dinner reservation. Tomorrow night." "A blind date?" she asked. Eleanor nodded. "Just an hour. Just dinner. No pressure, honey." Harper opened her mouth to politely refuse, but Sophie beat her to it. "Mom, let's go," she squealed, bouncing in place. "Maybe they have strawberry cake." And so, Harper found herself picking out a dress she hadn't worn in months. Simple, navy blue, fitted at the waist. She added light makeup, tied her blonde hair in a low ponytail, and tried to ignore the anxiety in her chest. When the cab dropped them off outside La Rose, Harper's nerves nearly made her turn around. The restaurant was elegant, glowing from the inside with soft light and polished marble. Everything screamed expensive. Harper hesitated, gripping Sophie's hand. Maybe this isn't a good idea. Before she could finish, Sophie spotted something inside. A man in a gray suit sat at a table near the center, calm and composed. Next to him was a quiet boy around 4, playing with a small toy dinosaur. Sophie's eyes lit up. "There, that's him, Mommy." "No, Sophie, wait," Harper said. But it was too late. The little girl pulled away, running across the lobby, her dress bouncing with every step. "Mom, let's go," she shouted with a grin, heading straight for the table. Harper froze for half a second, heart pounding, then rushed after her, cheeks flushed with embarrassment. People were turning to look. By the time she reached the table, Sophie had already climbed into the empty seat beside the boy. "This is my mom," Sophie declared proudly. "She's nice." The man, Nate, stood and offered a gentle smile. His voice was calm and steady. "You must be Harper. I've heard a lot about you." Harper brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm so sorry." She just got excited. Nate chuckled. "It's okay. Honestly, she handled the introduction better than I would have." Harper gave a tight, polite smile. She suddenly felt underdressed, out of place, but then she looked at the boy beside him, quietly watching Sophie with wide, curious eyes. "I'm Owen," the boy said softly. Harper knelt beside Sophie. "Say hello nicely, okay?" "I did," Sophie whispered, leaning closer to Owen. "Do you like cake?" Owen nodded slowly. "Chocolate." Sophie beamed. "Me too." Harper looked at Nate again, his calm presence, the way he observed the children first before returning to her. Maybe this wasn't going to be as uncomfortable as she feared. He gestured toward the seat. "Shall we?" Harper hesitated only a second, then sat down. "Just dinner," she reminded herself silently. 1 hour. But something about the way Nate smiled, patient, unforced, made her feel just a little more at ease. And for the first time in a long while, Harper wondered what it would feel like to stay. The waiter appeared with menus, and Harper glanced at the prices, her stomach twisting. She tried not to let it show. Nate must have noticed her hesitation because he leaned over and whispered, "Order whatever you and Sophie like. No pressure. We're just here to eat, and maybe survive the chaos together." Harper looked up at him, a bit startled. That word, together, sounded oddly comforting. As the kids busied themselves coloring the children's menu with borrowed crayons, Harper and Nate began to talk. At first, it was awkward, two strangers trying to find common ground across fine china and flickering candlelight. "So, you work in elder care?" Nate asked gently. Harper nodded. "At the rehabilitation center just off Parkside. It's not glamorous, but it's meaningful. Some of the residents just want someone to listen. It teaches you patience, humility." Nate looked genuinely interested. "That's incredible. I imagine it takes a lot of heart to do what you do." Harper blinked, surprised. Most people either looked at her with pity or politely changed the subject. Nate's eyes didn't judge. They saw her. "What about you?" she asked. "Besides running a company and surviving lemonade attacks?" He smiled. "Architectural design. I love creating spaces that help people feel something. After my wife passed, I couldn't work for a while. Owen, he pulled me out of that. Kids have a way of anchoring you, don't they?" Harper nodded slowly. "They do." Just then, a clatter echoed through the room. Sophie had dropped her fork. Harper's reflex was to apologize, reach down, but Nate was faster. He bent, retrieved the fork, and handed it back to Sophie with a dramatic bow. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced softly, "a round of applause for tonight's featured percussionist." Sophie giggled. A few guests nearby smiled kindly. No one stared, no one scoffed. Harper met Nate's eyes. There was no embarrassment there, only warmth. Owen watched his dad, then looked at Sophie. "I liked that sound. I can do it again," Sophie offered, raising her spoon. "No," both Harper and Nate said in unison. The kids laughed. The main courses arrived, and conversation flowed more easily. Harper shared a story about a resident who had taught her how to play gin rummy. Nate told one about Owen's obsession with building pillow forts in the living room, regardless of guests. Halfway through dinner, Harper realized something. She was smiling. Not out of politeness, not because she was trying to fill silence, but because she felt seen, understood, equal. She looked across the table. Nate was helping Owen cut his chicken into bite-sized pieces while still managing to answer Sophie's question about whether strawberry milk came from pink cows. Harper watched him, his calm hands, his patient voice, his easy rhythm as a father, and something inside her softened. It wasn't a perfect night. Sophie spilled her juice, and Harper forgot the name of her dish midway through ordering. But nothing about the evening was uncomfortable. There was no pretension. Just two adults and two small children trying to find a new kind of normal. As dessert arrived, "Yes, strawberry cake," Sophie beamed. "I knew it," she declared proudly. Owen grinned for the first time in weeks. Harper glanced at Nate, and he smiled at her like he'd been waiting for her to look his way. And just like that, for one night, two very different worlds shared one table, and somehow it fit. Saturday morning came with clear skies and a soft breeze. Harper hadn't planned much. Weekends were usually for laundry and cartoons. But when Mrs. Eleanor knocked on her door, smiling sweetly and holding a picnic basket, Harper couldn't say no. "Come with me, darling," the older woman said. "The park is lovely today. You and Sophie need some air." Sophie jumped in excitement, already tugging on her pink sandals. "Do they have ducks? I want to feed ducks." The park, however, held more surprises than Harper expected. As they reached the grassy clearing, she froze. Nate was there. So was Owen. Nate looked up from unpacking a picnic blanket and waved. "What a coincidence," he said, though the sparkle in Mrs. Eleanor's eyes gave it away. Harper glanced sideways at the old woman, who only smiled and hummed innocently. They ended up staying. The kids ran off with chalk sticks, drawing bright suns and wobbly flowers on the stone path. Sophie tied a ribbon to a stick and called it her kite. Owen followed her everywhere, laughing harder than Harper had ever seen. Meanwhile, Nate pulled out a chilled glass bottle and handed it to her. "Mint tea," he said quietly, not making a big deal of it. Harper blinked. "You remembered? You wrinkled your nose at coffee during the dinner," he said with a grin. It stuck. The simplicity of it, just him paying attention, touched her more than she let on. She took a sip, letting the cold tea calm her nerves. Thanks. Nate also pulled out a packet of hypoallergenic baby wipes and tissues. Figured Sophie might need these. Owen used to have the same sneezy thing in spring. Harper's heart tightened. It wasn't grand gestures. It was kindness like this that got to her. The four of them shared sandwiches from Nate's basket. They talked about favorite animals, favorite colors, and favorite bedtime stories. At one point, Sophie pulled on Harper's sleeve and whispered, "Mommy, can we live next to Owen forever? Then I can play with him every day." Harper looked up and caught Nate already watching her. They both laughed softly. For a moment, it didn't feel impossible. Another afternoon, Harper and Sophie visited the children's library. Harper was crouched, scanning titles when a familiar little voice called out, "Miss Harper, read to us?" She turned to see Owen, holding a picture book and smiling hopefully. Sophie was already tugging Harper toward the reading corner. Nate arrived minutes later, but instead of interrupting, he stood at a distance, arms folded, just watching. Harper read about dragons and princesses, while the two children leaned on her lap, eyes wide. When she glanced up, Nate was still there. He didn't say a word, but there was something in his expression, quiet, full, grateful. But it was a rainy Tuesday that truly shifted something. Harper's shift had run late. By the time she got to Sophie's preschool, storm clouds had already opened up. As she ushered her daughter to the car, the engine sputtered and died. Panic crept in. Her phone had 3% battery, and no one was answering. She wrapped her arms around herself, soaked to the bone, trying to shield Sophie beneath a tiny umbrella. That's when headlights pulled up behind her, and Nate stepped out, holding a large black umbrella. "I saw your name on the pickup list," he said, voice calm despite the rain. "Thought you might need some company." Harper's mouth opened, then closed. She didn't know what to say. Without a word, Nate handed her the umbrella, took off his coat, and draped it over Sophie. Then he crouched by the car, sleeves rolled up, checking under the hood in the pouring rain. "Don't," Harper started, but he raised a hand. "Let me." 10 minutes later, the car coughed back to life. Soaked through and muddy, Nate stood back and gave her a tired smile. Harper stared at him, overwhelmed. "Why would you do all this?" she asked softly, her voice shaking more than she intended. Nate ran a hand through his wet hair, eyes sincere. "Because I care. Even if I don't know what we are yet, I know I care." And in that moment, under the gray clouds and glistening rain, something fragile but real began to bloom. The leaves had started to fall when Harper noticed it, the warmth in her chest when Nate texted, the way Sophie's eyes lit up at the mention of Owen, how she sometimes caught herself smiling at nothing. It scared her. Their park visits with Mrs. Eleanor had become more frequent, more familiar. Nate would always bring extra snacks for the kids. He remembered Sophie's favorite color. He listened when Harper talked. Not just nodded, but listened. And that felt dangerously good. One Thursday morning at the rehab center, Harper arrived early, tying her ponytail tighter as she entered the East Wing. She was assigned to assist Mrs. Langford that day, an elegant woman in her 80s with a diamond brooch and a sharp tongue. While Harper fluffed her pillows and checked her chart, a message pinged on her phone. "Nate, hope your morning's kind to you. Don't forget to take your break." Harper smiled without realizing. Mrs. Langford, watching from her armchair, raised an eyebrow. "Well, well," the older woman said, voice dry. "You're glowing. That must be some message." Harper flushed, pocketing the phone. "Just a friend checking in." "Friend," the woman echoed with a smirk. "Let me guess. Handsome, rich, and utterly unattainable." Harper didn't answer. She busied herself rearranging the water pitcher. Mrs. Langford didn't stop. "Let me give you some advice, dear. Don't confuse kindness with affection. Men like that don't marry women like us, especially ones with baggage." Harper froze, her hand tightening on the plastic jug. "Trust me," the woman added, a little softer but no kinder. "You're a pretty girl, but pretty doesn't buy you a seat at their table." That night, Harper couldn't sleep. The words kept ringing in her ears. She hated how they echoed old wounds, memories of her ex's family calling her irresponsible, of being left pregnant and alone at 23, and worse, the idea of Sophie getting attached. Then hurt. "I can't do this again," Harper thought. "Not if it ends in disappointment. Not if it means Sophie loses someone else." She started replying slower to Nate's texts. She declined 2 invitations from Mrs. Eleanor. When Nate offered to stop by with a puzzle Owen wanted to share with Sophie, she made an excuse about work. He noticed. He didn't push, but the silence between them grew. One evening, Harper sat on her worn couch, laptop on her knees. Sophie had just gone to bed, clutching her pink teddy bear tighter than usual. Harper stared at the blank email screen for a long time. Then, finally, she began to type. Subject: Thank you, dear Nate. I want to thank you for everything. The walks, the tea, the kindness. You've made the last few weeks brighter for both me and Sophie. But I think we live in 2 very different worlds. Right now, I need to focus on being a mom and on my work. I hope you understand, Harper. She clicked send, closed the laptop, and tried not to cry. The next morning, Sophie frowned over her cereal, swirling her spoon in the milk. "Mommy?" she asked quietly. "Did I do something wrong?" Harper looked up, startled. "What? Of course not." Sophie's lower lip trembled. "We don't see Mr. Nate and Owen anymore. Did they stop liking us?" Harper's chest clenched. She moved closer, pulling Sophie onto her lap. "No, sweetie," she whispered. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Then why?" Harper stroked her daughter's hair, trying to find the right words. "Sometimes, grown-ups just need space. It's not your fault, okay?" Sophie nodded slowly, but she didn't smile. Harper held her tighter. Outside, the wind rustled the fallen leaves, and inside, Harper sat quietly, trying to convince herself that letting go now was the right kind of protection. That distance was safety. But her heart, it wasn't so sure. It had been nearly a week since Harper sent the email. A quiet, aching kind of week. She tried to stay busy. Extra shifts, laundry, reading the same bedtime story to Sophie 3 nights in a row. But the absence of Nate and Owen in their days left a space Harper didn't know how to fill. Then the call came from the hospital. Mrs. Eleanor had slipped on the stairs. Minor injuries, but under observation. Harper arrived not long after. So did Nate. They both stood outside room 204, unsure of what to say. But the moment they stepped inside and saw the older woman resting, her arm in a sling, a small bruise on her cheek, their awkwardness vanished. "I brought her cranberry muffins," Harper mumbled. "I brought crossword puzzles," Nate added. They set their things on the table at the same time and glanced at each other. Then, quiet laughter broke the silence. For the rest of the afternoon, they stayed, taking turns adjusting pillows, checking the nurse's rounds, making sure Mrs. Eleanor had everything she needed. The woman, eyes closed, barely moved. But Harper noticed the slight twitch at the corner of her mouth, the way her sleeping face angled toward their voices. She was listening. Later, the 2 of them sat side by side in the hallway, sipping bad vending machine coffee. Neither spoke for a moment. Then Nate said softly, "You didn't need to push me away. I don't look at you like the others might." Harper didn't respond. He continued, "When I see you, I see someone real, a mom who shows up, who doesn't quit. I see strength, Harper, not status." She stared down at her paper cup, fidgeting with the rim. "I have nothing impressive, Nate," she whispered. "You've got a company, a home that probably smells like vanilla candles, and I've got just enough to pay rent and keep my daughter in pink dresses." She tried to smile, but it faltered. Nate reached into his coat pocket and held out a small box. Confused, Harper opened it. Inside was a pair of tiny pink shoes, Sophie's, worn, scuffed, familiar. But now the soles were clean, the stitching repaired, the faded bows brightened. "You fixed them?" she asked, eyes wide. He nodded. "I saw them in the stroller basket after the library. One had a broken strap. I took them to a guy my mom used to swear by." "Why would you?" "Not out of pity," he interrupted gently. "I didn't fix them because I felt sorry for you, Harper. I fixed them because those shoes remind me of the best walk I've taken in years." She blinked fast, trying not to cry. "They squeaked," he added with a small grin. "Every third step." Harper laughed softly, one hand brushing a tear away. "She calls them her happy shoes." "Well," Nate said, "they deserved a second chance." The door behind them creaked open. Mrs. Eleanor sat up slowly in bed, giving them a pointed look. "You two are terrible at hiding your hearts, you know that?" Harper flushed. Nate chuckled. "I thought you were asleep," Harper said. "I was resting my eyes," Eleanor replied, waving her good hand. "Old people do that when the room gets interesting." They all laughed. For a moment, Harper looked at Nate, not as a CEO, not as someone out of reach, but simply as the man who fixed her daughter's shoes, who listened, who cared, and for the first time since they met, she didn't feel the distance between them. She felt close, safe. They never labeled it. There were no declarations, no sweeping gestures, just small things, thoughtful things, like the way Nate started showing up on Saturdays with a toolbox, helping Harper fix the creaky cabinet door or the flickering hallway light in her small apartment, or how Sophie and Owen would sit cross-legged on the floor, drawing a house with 4 people while their parents worked side by side. One Saturday afternoon, Nate replaced the peeling number plate on Harper's front door. Sophie ran up with a marker-streaked drawing in hand. "It's us," she beamed. "Me, Mommy, Owen, and you, Mr. Nate." He looked at the picture, 4 stick figures holding hands under a crooked sun. His heart thudded. Later that week, Harper and Sophie were invited to Nate's house for dinner. Harper hesitated at first. His world still felt too polished, too far from her own, but she said yes, for Sophie, and maybe a little for herself. When they arrived, she was surprised. Yes, the house was large, the floors gleamed, and the chandelier in the foyer looked like something from a magazine, but the warmth was real. A soft blanket draped over the couch, crayon marks on the side of a cabinet, a little pink booster seat already set at the dining table. Sophie ran straight into the living room and squealed, "Mommy, my picture's on the fridge." Harper followed her gaze. There, in the center of a stainless steel refrigerator, was the drawing of the 4-people house, right next to Owen's finger paint masterpieces. Harper blinked back sudden tears. After dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and Nate's failed attempt at a salad, too much dressing, he admitted with a laugh, they sat on the back porch. Owen fell asleep in Harper's lap. Sophie curled up next to Nate, humming. Harper glanced over at the man beside her. In the fading twilight, he looked more peaceful than she'd ever seen him. "Nate," she said softly, "are you serious about this?" He turned to her. "I've been serious since the moment Sophie told me I smelled like pancakes." She laughed. "I want more of that," he added. "More bedtime stories, more grocery trips with 2 carts, more of your weird tea collection taking over my kitchen." Harper couldn't help smiling. Her heart felt both full and fragile. A few days later, Harper found a small envelope tucked inside Sophie's backpack. Inside, a neatly folded card read, "For the team of 2 who made our world better." It was a weekend getaway to a nearby countryside farm, animal feeding, hay rides, and a cabin big enough for 4. Sophie squealed when she saw the brochure. "We're going to see chickens, real ones." Harper looked at Nate across the room. He shrugged, a bit sheepish. "It's nothing fancy," he said. "Just a little escape, for all of us." She didn't answer right away, but that night she began to pack. On the second evening of their trip, the 4 of them walked through a golden field at sunset. Owen toddled ahead, chasing fireflies. Sophie clung to Harper's hand, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mommy," she said. "Is this what it feels like to have a real family?" Harper's steps faltered. She looked at her daughter's eyes, hopeful, glowing. Then she looked at Nate, who was watching them with a quiet, steady gaze. She didn't answer with words. She just reached out and took his hand. And this time, she didn't let go. The morning was quiet, gray with winter's chill. Harper's phone buzzed just after sunrise. A message from Nate. "Owen's been running a high fever since last night. I'm staying home with him today." No second thought. Harper called her workplace, arranged a half-day off, and set a pot of chicken soup on the stove. By 10 a.m., she was on Nate's porch with Sophie in her pink coat, a thermos in one hand and a stuffed bear in the other. Inside, the house felt different. The usual hum of cartoons and giggles was replaced by a heavy hush. Owen lay curled under a blanket on the couch, his cheeks flushed, eyelids fluttering. He didn't move when Sophie tiptoed close. She climbed carefully onto the couch, placed her well-loved bear beside him, and whispered, "This is Mr. Barry. He always helps me feel better when I'm sick. You can borrow him." Nate managed a tired smile. "He's been asking for juice and falling asleep mid-sentence," he said quietly. Harper knelt beside the couch, unscrewed the soup lid, and gently blew on the first spoonful. "Let's try a little, sweetheart," she said softly, cupping Owen's head and bringing the spoon to his lips. He took a sip, then nestled deeper into the blanket. She placed a cool hand on his forehead, brushing damp hair away. Nate watched from across the room, his hands folded. There was something in his eyes, something tender, raw, grateful. "She hasn't left his side since this morning," he said, almost to himself. Harper glanced up but said nothing. The room was quiet again, until Owen stirred. In a hushed, sleepy voice, his hand reached for Harper's. His small fingers curled tightly around hers. "Mommy, stay, don't go." Harper froze. Nate looked over, heart thudding. Owen blinked once, still not fully awake. Then, with the innocent weight of dreams and fever, he mumbled, "Can you be my real mommy? Then Daddy won't be lonely. Sophie can be my little sister. We can all stay, forever." Silence, the kind that fills every corner, sits in your chest, makes it hard to breathe. Harper didn't look at Nate. Nate didn't speak. But when their eyes met, they both knew. Those weren't just the words of a fevered child. They were wishes unspoken, truths they hadn't dared admit. Harper gently squeezed Owen's hand and whispered, "Rest now, sweetheart. I'm right here." Hours passed. Harper stayed. She fed Owen small spoonfuls of soup between naps. Sophie eventually fell asleep next to him, arms around Mr. Barry. The snow started falling outside, soft and silent. By evening, Owen's fever finally broke. His breathing slowed. He smiled a little in his sleep. Harper pulled a blanket over Sophie and leaned back against the couch. Nate sat beside her, shoulders almost touching. For a long time, neither of them said a word. Then, in a voice low and steady, Nate finally spoke. "It wasn't just Owen saying that, you know. It's been in my heart too." Harper looked at him, really looked, and something in her face softened. She didn't speak. She just leaned her head onto his shoulder. And in that quiet moment, no promises, no grand confessions, just presence. It was enough. They sat together as night deepened, holding on to something they hadn't quite named, but both already knew. A beginning. 2 weeks later, laughter returned to the Hartley house. Owen's cheeks had regained their color, and his energy was back in full force. On a bright Saturday morning, the kitchen was filled with flour, giggles, and the sweet scent of gingerbread cookies. "More stars!" Sophie shouted, waving a cookie cutter in the air. "I want dinosaurs," Owen countered, slapping dough onto the counter with gusto. Harper stood by the sink, washing dishes, her blonde hair pulled into a high ponytail, wearing a simple cotton dress dusted with flour. She smiled quietly at the chaos. In that moment, she looked radiant, not because of the clothes or makeup, but because she was home. Nate leaned against the fridge, arms folded, watching her. To him, this scene, this woman, These kids, this joyful mess, was everything he had never known he needed. He bent down and whispered something in Owen's ear. The boy grinned, blushed, then climbed up onto the counter beside the mixing bowl. "Miss Harper?" he called, his little voice shaking slightly. "Will you marry Daddy, so we can be a forever family?" The world paused. Harper turned around, stunned, and then she laughed, a sound full of warmth and disbelief. Tears welled up before she could stop them. She turned to Nate, who stepped forward and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. No grand gestures, just sincerity. Inside was a simple silver ring, elegant and understated, just like her. "This isn't a perfect life," Nate said softly, "but it's the one I want, with you in it, with Sophie, with Owen. Will you be the heart of our home?" Harper blinked fast, nodded, and whispered, "Yes." Sophie shrieked and spun in a circle. "Does this mean Owen is really my brother now?" Owen jumped down and nodded proudly. Forever. Weeks later, under soft spring sunlight, a small wedding unfolded in a garden filled with white flowers and genuine smiles. Harper wore a simple white dress, her golden hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She looked like something out of a storybook, not because of the dress, but because of the peace on her face. Sophie, in a pink satin dress with a flower crown, threw petals down the aisle with great concentration. Owen, tasked with carrying the rings, took his job seriously until he tripped slightly and dropped the box into the grass. "Uh-oh," he cried. Everyone laughed. Harper knelt, helped him retrieve the ring, and kissed his forehead. "I got it," he whispered proudly, holding the box up high again. When the vows were said and the kiss shared, there wasn't a dry eye among the close-knit group of guests. No orchestra, no castle, just love, honest and whole. Months later, on another soft afternoon, the family of four spread out a checkered blanket in the park. Sophie and Owen ran through the grass, chasing bubbles. Harper lay on her back, her head resting on Nate's lap, eyes watching the clouds drift by. "Funny, isn't it?" she murmured, a smile tugging at her lips. "All it took was a little girl in a pink dress pulling me to a blind date I didn't even want." Nate chuckled, brushing her hair off her forehead. "Best decision she ever made." The camera would have pulled back here, if this were a movie, revealing a perfectly ordinary scene. A man and a woman, two children laughing, sunlight warming the grass. No fanfare, no drama, just the kind of happiness that grows slowly, quietly, and stays. A family that wasn't perfect, but was perfectly theirs. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey of love, healing, and unexpected family. If this story moved you, if Harper's quiet strength, Nate's gentle devotion, and the sweet innocence of Sophie and Owen touched your heart, don't forget to hit that hype button to show your support. And for more emotional, soul-stirring stories like this, subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of hope, second chances, and the kind of love that makes ordinary lives feel extraordinary. Let us know in the comments which moment made you tear up. Until next time, keep believing in love and the quiet power of choosing each other every day. Soul Stirring Stories, where every heart has a home.